You know, you guys promised Jimbo and did not deliver.
Yeah, no. Maybe he's off fighting the IRS or something.
Well, the IRS doesn't work on Halloween, so maybe he just got bored and left.
Rats. If only we'd come here sooner.
Well, I don't know. This is a nice underpass, and with all the foot traffic, I don't think you'd leave.
Well, he did.
Oh, listen, I mean, something bad could have happened. Like, what if something forced him to leave?
Well, I don't know, how could that happen? Like, what do you think? I'm just gonna, like, find his dead body sitting around? He's right behind me, isn't he? Fellas, is this real?
It's real.
Alright, well, what do we do now?
He's fucking dead. We have to call the cops.
Well, we can't do that. They're probably busy.
Yeah, a lot of Halloween parties to bust.
Well, who cares if they're busy? He's been murdered.
I don't want to be annoying.
Yeah.
Alright. Well, then we need to figure this out on our own.
Well, are there any clues?
There's this. You left a note.
Wait, is that?
That's Freddy Fazbear.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Place owned by the bear. Problem. We do not have a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in this town.
That's true. We don't have Freddy Fazbear's, but we do have pizza. So maybe we just try the closest pizza place?
I could fuck up a pizza right now.
I could also fuck up a pizza right now.
No. Like, for finding clues.
Why do you think it's okay to disappoint people?
That's true. That's true.
The next major indie horror sensation to come after Slender, and what is pretty commonly regarded as the true founding father of mascot horror, was Five Nights at Freddy's, and my goodness, what a journey it has been. Believe it or not, at one point in time, Five Nights at Freddy's was a novel and interesting piece of media. The original Five Nights at Freddy's game, released in 2014, was a game where you work as a night security guard at a pizzeria and have to utilize your limited power supply to watch for 4 animatronics and prevent them from getting into your room and killing you. The game's setting and characters draw heavy inspiration from the bizarre and uncanny animatronics of Chuck E. Cheese from way back when. And that was pretty damn cool back in the day. Like, whoa, a horror game with some intriguing lore and unique gameplay with a premise based on unsettling childhood memories. That's such a fun concept. Who the hell is Montgomery Gator? That's my fundamental beef with Five Nights at Freddy's nowadays. There's just too much shit going on.
With 14 games and a bunch of books that technically aren't canon but also are kind of canon and sort of overlap with the canon in a lot of ways, and also there's a movie now, and it's just a lot harder to stay invested in the franchise.
Like, okay, we started with the first Five Nights at Freddy's game with some freaky characters and a bit of mystery sprinkled in, with stuff like the 5 missing children, Golden Freddy, and the Bite of 87. That's all well and good and an interesting self-contained little thing. Then Five Nights at Freddy's 2 comes along and builds on that concept, with similar yet revamped gameplay and a massively expanded lore told primarily through these crude, cryptic, and sort of unsettling Atari-style minigames and cutscenes, which introduce us to the now notorious Purple Guy. Then we have Five Nights at Freddy's 3, which changes up the gameplay a bit more and also has crude Atari-style minigames and cutscenes. But this one devotes a lot of its time to telling an expanded story of the Purple Guy, which is fairly interesting at least. Then we have Five Nights at Freddy's 4, which has a pretty similar gameplay and Atari cutscene setup, but this time telling the story of a small child with a difficult home life, which is a pretty compelling narrative that expands the world of Five Nights at Freddy's in an interesting way. But with every new entry into the series, the lore seems to continue expanding and new mysteries seem to arise while older mysteries keep falling by the wayside without ever being fully resolved. And then it just keeps going. Five Nights at Freddy's sister location is where they gave up on numbering the games because otherwise too many people would catch on to the fact that the series has produced 6 games in 2 years. The franchise's incredibly quick game output was helpful for keeping the series relevant and giving the fans a steady supply of gameplay and lore to chew on, but it also made it easy for things to get out of control pretty quickly. Sister location is where I personally fell off of the series because by that time I was just too old and mature to be interested in the series anymore. I was 15. Nowadays, I still know stuff about it just through passively absorbing random information from the internet, but I'm certainly not hyper-invested, keeping close track of the series, deliberately seeking out more content and information. Year after year, it just keeps piling on more and more stupid-ass convoluted lore to the point where it just isn't fun to follow anymore. I'm old enough to remember when the biggest mystery was, who is the purple guy? And MatPat said it was the phone guy, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy! And then Five Nights at Freddy's 3 came out, and it made it seem very unlikely that the purple guy was the phone guy, and then MatPat made another theory where he said, actually, he is the phone guy, and I was like, what? Now the purple guy is canonically just some independent character named William Afton, and he kills children and melts their agony into liquid metal, and also he's a glitch inside a game where he brainwashes people, and also his son is named Michael Afton, and he gets his insides ripped out and gets his body possessed by this robot homunculus thing, but his rotting corpse is still able to stay alive through spirit power or something, so he stays alive and keeps walking around places to try to find his dad, and also there's a child who's actually a robot kid. Yeah.
For every mystery solved, 5 more mysteries take its place, and a lot of the time when a mystery gets solved, it ends up unsolving a previously solved mystery, and throughout all of this, the series still has never even remotely addressed one of the biggest mysteries of the franchise.
Why does it require power to keep the doors down? Despite all of this complaining, though, I still do have a soft spot for the series. I can't help it, it's just a staple of my childhood. For what it was back in the olden days, it was a lot of fun to watch and keep up with, and even today, it can be kinda neat to check back every once in a while and see what's going on with it. While I think a lot of its original novelty and charm has disappeared over time, I still respect it for what it was and the entertainment value that it's provided throughout the years.
Guys, I got it. He died because he tried to out Pizza the Hut. It actually just makes so much sense.
I guess, but who'd want pizza on Halloween?
Me?
He's got a point.
Yeah. But why would Pizza Hut do that, you know? Hurt a young, thriving business? You know, that'd kill the entrepreneurial spirit.
That's true. I mean, a giant corporation would never do something bad.
Yeah.
All right, well, whatever. There's got to be a clue around here somewhere.
Oh, guys, it's right here.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah.
Art department. It's gotta be the art department.
Oh, because it's like a cartoon. Okay, that's smart. That's
Nah,
smart.
man. It's because they make creatures. I've seen some things.
After Five Nights at Freddy's reigned supreme over the internet for a number of years, in 2017 we would see another game that I'd consider a mascot horror giant step up to the plate. Bendy and the Ink Machine. In this game, you play as a former employee of an animation studio that used to produce old-timey 1920s, 30s style cartoons. The studio has long been abandoned, but you've been invited back by your old boss to show you something. It's an overall fairly novel and interesting concept, making for a potentially solid story based on exploring remnants of the past while utilizing a unique visual style with those old-timey cartoons. But that being said, the game does come with a share of problems. Based on my experience with the demo and from what I've heard about the rest of the gameplay is pretty heavily based around fetch questing, finding an assortment of MacGuffins while you uncover some lore details and explore the game's environments. In later chapters, there's some combat gameplay to fight off an assortment of ink monsters, but all you do is click the mouse to swing an axe and that's kinda it. It's obviously not offensive or anything, but it's not super compelling, and I don't think it helps a ton to reinforce the horror of the game. Like, for all my talking about Five Nights at Freddy's lore, a good chunk of why it became popular was actually because of its unique and exciting gameplay, being stationary while having to multitask to manage a variety of different animatronics that are all trying to kill you. It could get pretty difficult and stressful, and it definitely helped to add to the allure and excitement of the game beyond just its horror elements. With Bendy, pick up the wrench. But overall, it's still a totally fine gaming experience, and I can see why it appealed to a lot of people. As the game proceeded with its 5 chapters, each one released a couple months apart, it wrapped up its story, though from what I can tell didn't seem to address some of the complaints people had. After its 5th chapter released, it faded from relevance for a while until a sequel game got announced. After numerous delays to the sequel, they released a holdover game called Boris and the Dark Survival, which was somewhat poorly received.
But finally last year, the sequel was released as Bendy and the Dark Revival, which from what I've heard is generally agreed to be a decent improvement on the first, with more interesting visuals, a bit more diverse gameplay, and a more compelling story.
Overall, Bendy and the Ink Machine is a fine game series, but not something that I ever found too interesting personally. I never hopped on the bandwagon back in its prime, and I wasn't that into the demo when I played it recently. But regardless, it's pretty easy to see through Bendy a further entrenchment of the pattern that holds throughout a lot of mascot horror games. We have the colorful, recognizable mascot, a setting, story, and aesthetic based on some sort of nostalgic and/or kid-oriented thing that has suddenly gone bad, an elaborate and cryptic lore sprinkled throughout the game to incentivize fan theories and discussion, and the lore specifically utilizes the concept of people being dead and possessing or turning into the recognizable characters from the children's thing that's gone bad, and yeah, there's a few commonalities here. Obviously, Five Nights at Freddy's did not invent childhood nostalgia or possession or lore, and it's not wrong for the Bendy developers to make something creative that utilizes these themes, but I'm just saying, if a lot of games start to follow this pattern, it just might get old fast. It just might.
You know what this place needs? Less funding.
Yeah. Less windows, too.
Yeah, what do they need all this sunlight for?
Yeah. Dude, and then they use all that money to put a spa in the engineering building.
What? No, they should definitely use it to hire a third deputy vice provost of student affairs.
What is that? It sounds useless.
What? No, do you know how hard it is to send an email telling us they're raising our tuition again?
Okay, fair enough. But have you seen all the math that engineering students have to do? It looks rough.
What? Math is not hard.
Yes, it is.
That's just because you're stupid.
No, I'm not.
What's 9 plus 10 plus 1?
22?
You're stupid. Guys! Clue.
A what? Oh, the thing.
Alright, this has to be an apartment, right? I mean, tall building, neighbors.
I mean, it could be a 15-story house.
Well, no one owns a 15-story house.
You clearly didn't go to Eric's party last year.
Okay, can we just try the apartment first?
Fine.
Man. So Hello Neighbor was a game that initially amassed a lot of popularity in its early alpha days, but later fell from grace as it focused more on following trends than on fulfilling its original vision. It was a stealth horror game based on sneaking into your neighbor's house and finding a secret hidden in his basement. A central element of the game was that the neighbor's AI would learn from your gameplay, adjusting its behavior and often putting up traps or roadblocks in the places where you previously tried to get in. It's a pretty interesting concept, and that, combined with the stealth-based gameplay and the creative Tim Burton-esque art style, allowed the game to go viral. But over the course of subsequent alpha builds, the game design shifted more towards developing a more elaborate story and lore, while the neighbor's house got fucking big. And by the time that the game officially released near the end of 2017, it was this confused mess of random rooms, puzzles, and weird lore bits, and a lot of people kinda lost interest. Following the release of the original Hello Neighbor, the creators would continue to release spin-off after spin-off and even try their hand at an animated show, which is the source of... Bro, he doesn't want you! Obviously, we can't know the developers' true intentions and motives, and maybe this was always their creative vision for the game, but the shifts in Hello Neighbor's structure and the later initiatives they undertook point to a narrative of the dev team making something fairly innovative and creative, only to throw out a lot of what made it so creative, not to mention successful in the first place, in order to follow a trend. I do get that they would like to make money and that creativity doesn't pay the bills, but it's a damn shame to see something that had a lot of promise fall so far from grace. I'll give it this. There's no ghostly possession of children's media characters in this game, but it still follows the general mascot horror mold of utilizing a colorful, recognizable mascot and a heavy investment into hidden lore and secrets to boost discussion. This formula is already a little old as is, but Hello Neighbor in particular just feels so inauthentic as a product, so clearly trend-chasing, and not to mention the fact that the game as a game isn't that outstanding, that it leaves an especially dark stain on the realm of mascot horror.
So he's walking in the forest, alright, and he stumbles upon Abe Lincoln. And Abe's all like, call me Ham. And he starts meowing and...
Alright, hang on. We gotta look for a clue. I mean, there's
Do
probably
you
one
think
around.
Abe Lincoln would like Five Nights at Freddy's if he were alive today?
It's a good question.
Maybe.
I feel like he has to, just because he and the bear have the same hat.
That's true.
Yeah.
Would he be any good at, though?
Oh yeah, he so would. Abe Lincoln was a huge gamer. He played a lot of chess.
Chess?
Yeah, he played chess.
He's literally me. I love chess.
You play chess?
Oh, I play a lot of chess. I bet I could beat Abe Lincoln in chess.
Is that real?
Who's to tell? Plus, wouldn't it be a little disrespectful to, beat the president at chess?
Well, what would he care? He's dead.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, but we got to start looking for clues, because if they're not here, transport to Eric's is going to be difficult.
Yeah, but I don't know. Look at all these apartments. You mean any one of them?
Well, they can't be in it, They're all locked.
Well, he could just break in.
Well, a killer wouldn't do that. That's illegal.
Fair point.
Oh, guys, it's right here. I found it.
I don't even know if there's statues around here.
Maybe it's like a metaphor, like a mannequin or something. Maybe someone who's just
Guys,
like really, really
I've got
still.
I've got it. Trust me. Come on.
Poppy Playtime is a more recent offender and a game that I think significantly intensified discussion around the state of modern mascot horror. It's brought to us by Enchanted Mob, the people who have brought us such gems as Circus Babies Family Vacation Gone Wrong and Talking Ben Butt Dials Circus Baby, because the iPad babies aren't stimulated enough. Poppy Playtime is a game that has a colorful, recognizable mascot, a setting, story, and aesthetic based on some sort of nostalgic and/or kid-oriented thing that has suddenly gone bad, an elaborate and cryptic lore sprinkled throughout the game to incentivize fan theories and discussion, and the lore specifically utilizes the concept of people being dead and possessing or turning into the recognizable characters from the children's thing that's gone bad, and wow, isn't that really interesting? As a game in and of itself, it's alright. I played Chapter 1, and overall the environments are decent, the animations and visuals are pretty good, the puzzles were fine and inoffensive, and the chase sequence at the end was solid. The game is a fine experience, but that's kinda all it was for me. It was decent, but not that special as a game, as it seems like the series put a lot more into its lore and visuals to make something that's appealing beyond just being a video game. Essentially, they put a lot of effort into making the game marketable and appealing to a wider internet audience who almost certainly will not play the game, but will still become interested in it. Not to mention, this game has a link to buy merch on the literal title screen, and it also got involved in this big controversy with peddling NFTs. Yeah, remember when those were a thing? It all just gives off a vibe that this game is a product whose primary purpose is to sell other products. In other words, it's a Pokemon game. Again, we can't fully know the developer's intentions, and the game is a passable game as is, and they do actually seem to have put a decent amount of effort into things like the character designs and animations and the game's lore. But even if you ignore the aggressive focus on marketing and just take it as an earnest creative project, it's just kinda uninteresting to see these same mascot horror tropes become the next big thing on the internet yet again. And of course, if you don't ignore the aggressive focus on marketing, which is kinda hard to, that combined with the decent but not that amazing quality of the game itself makes it feel like just another fad indie horror game doing the same things as all the other ones.
Well, damn. You were right.
Been thinking about him a lot lately. Ham? Let's see what you got.
Now that is a man who would have loved Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah, I can definitely see it now.
Yeah. Where would Abe Lincoln hide a clue? You know, that would actually be a perfect chair to play Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I can just see it. He's just like, check the cameras, check the hallways, check Pirates Cove, check the hallways, Foxy, doors, Foxy hits the door, back to the cameras, check the hallways,
Hey, hey. Found a clue.
Oh, yeah. Is it? Oh, dude, that's a QR code. All right, I got this.
Bruh.
Fuck.
So you tell me this whole thing was a waste of time?
Well, hang on. If there's ever a dark image in a puzzle, writing it in Photoshop has to do something. I mean, we gotta at least try that before we give up.
Alright, well, let's head back to the apartment.
Alright.
Corey, we're heading out. Corey.
Fuck! He beat me.
Well, you know, I've got to say, there have been quite a few mascot horror games that are pretty unimaginative and seem to be more focused on marketing and virality than actually being a good game, and holy shit, guys. Man, Garten of Banban is terrible, am I right? This is the worst thing ever made. Okay, to be fair, yeah, it's pretty bad, but I honestly have nothing to say that hasn't already been said about this game. For the uninitiated, I'll just say it has mediocre visuals, uninteresting gameplay, a merch link on the title screen, and it copies pretty much every single well-worn trope of mascot horror games. It set off a ton of discussion about some of the issues that I've already mentioned. Of course, people had been talking about these problems before this game came out, but I think it was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. These problems had existed in other games before, but this game was just such a glaringly egregious example of these problems that it made for an easy punching bag for a wave of online anger over the state of modern mascot horror. But the consequence of that is that this game still remains a relevant topic of discussion and has gotten a ton of exposure that allows it to survive and be popular despite all the hate, so yeah, good job guys. Anyway, yeah, I don't know, this game is bad and has problems, but there's nothing I can say about it that hasn't already been said to death. Alright, if we just open it up here, and then go here, turn the brightness and contrast up. Oh, guys, that's a YouTube URL. Oh, okay, all we gotta do is enter it into the browser.
How the hell do you know that that's a YouTube URL?
I just know a lot of things.
Man, you really gotta get off YouTube. Go outside or something.
Yeah, he's got a point.
Oh shit. That's a coat.
Yeah, okay, I'll pull up a translator. Okay, I'll split screen it. Alright, someone read them off to me.
Alright. 010100011 011011.
But man, we've barely even scratched the surface! There's a huge assortment of indie horror games released throughout the years with a lot of diversity and unique qualities between them. For example, 123 Slaughter Me Street is an indie horror game where an innocent kid's thing is actually evil. Tattletale is an indie horror game where an innocent kid's thing is actually evil. Duck Season is an indie horror game where an innocent kid's thing is actually evil. Amanda the Adventurer is an indie horror game where an innocent kid's thing is actually evil. Andy's Apple Farm is an indie horror game where an innocent kid's thing is actually evil. Showdown Bandit is an indie horror game where an innocent kid's thing is actually evil. Rainbow Friends is an indie horror game where an innocent kid's thing is actually evil. My Friendly Neighborhood is an indie horror game where an innocent kid's thing is actually evil. Good grief! To be perfectly honest, although there are some substantial issues with the big offenders that I've mentioned, to an extent my beef with mascot horror is just that there's too damn much of it. For a while now, it's just felt like every other day there's some new indie horror game and it's like, holy shit guys, this game takes a childhood nostalgic thing and makes it dark and twisted, and it has hidden lore about how there were murders and experiments, and they put dead people in the scary childhood thing. It's just tiring, and it makes what was a compelling and exciting take on horror into, oh, it's another one of those games. But truth be told, we can never fully know the true intentions of developers in any given instance. I think in some cases you can clearly piece a narrative together. Some people are just trying to make a quick buck, and I think that's obnoxious because we already have enough developers trying to make a quick buck. Although on the other hand, as long as people are buying, can you really blame them for selling? And I think there are quite a few indie horror games that indeed use similar tropes and concepts, but were just genuinely inspired by indie horror games that came before, and maybe the developers were really putting in the effort to make something they cared about. And whether or not those games are good, it's important to not be too overly cynical when a decent chunk of these games are someone's earnest attempt at creativity.
0100111101.
Okay, that's gotta be base 64, right? So we just have to translate it again?
I guess. Oh, hey, it's another URL.
Why does it say Julius?
Short for Jimbo.
Ah.
Huh.
Wait, maybe Julius means something else.
Orange Julius.
Yeah. Wait, no.
Caesar. Julius Caesar.
Oh, he had the
He had the coat,
Yeah,
yeah.
he had the coat. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right.
Nice.
Come on. All right. Read them off again.
01010100.
And hey, even if you are sick of mascot horror games, there are still so many other options out there in the indie horror scene that are really creative and original. Just for example, there's Amnesia and Outlast, which obviously are pretty darn old now, but there's a reason they have the legacy that they have. And besides, they show that for as long as indie horror has had repetitive tropes and it's also had some truly outstanding works of art. SCP Containment Breach is another one that's somewhat old, but still pretty iconic, and it even received updates all the way through 2018. I'm not super familiar with the game itself, but the SCP lore makes for a really solid setting for a horror game, and the game has gotten pretty consistently good reception and popularity. Then there's Doki Doki Literature Club. Admittedly, it does still draw on themes of childhood nostalgia, though in this case it's not Chuck E. Cheese animatronics or toys, it's being a sad, pathetic loser in high school. It's a really creative and well-executed slow burn of a game that still remains up there as one of my personal favorites. Or what about Iron Lung? A game that is very much not mascot-based and has consistently been hailed as an absolutely unforgettable and terrifying experience, preying on fear of the unknown, fear of the ocean, isolation, and claustrophobia. From what I've heard, it's an incredibly effective horror experience that any fan of horror games ought to check out. And to be honest, even a lot of the overly saturated mascot horror games aren't even half bad. I still enjoy Five Nights at Freddy's despite its faults, and I've heard Tattletale was pretty solid. Then there's Baldi's Basics, which I'm not really sure how to categorize because it definitely felt like a typical mascot horror game throughout much of its prime, but in reality it's meant to be a fun little satire, and it seems to be pretty well liked. And just as a recent example, My Friendly Neighborhood has been consistently received as just a straight up really damn good game.
The cry goes round the kindergarten class. The neighborhood! The neighborhood!
Wait, is that Arlo? And a lot of the other mascot horror games, although they have more mixed reception overall, clearly have a sizable audience of people who found them enjoyable, and they're clearly something that some people will have a good time with. Even if some of them aren't that impressive, they're not awful, and there's a reason that they're as popular as they are. Just because there's an oversaturation of a certain type of game, and with a fair number of stinkers in there, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're all bad, and it certainly doesn't mean that you don't have other options.
11101.
Alright, do we just try the same cipher again?
Yeah.
Sure.
Alright, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
As indie horror has exploded in popularity over the past decade, I think a lot of trends that have arisen throughout its life have become pretty annoying and frustrating. There's definitely a pattern of what at least looks like cashing in on a fad for the sake of attention and money rather than undertaking any sort of creative passion projects. Now, mainstream video games do this too. It's not exactly unheard of to sell a product for the sake of financial gain. But with indie games, you kind of come to expect them to be a little more imaginative and unorthodox, and when they're not, it's jarring. Now here's the thing about that. It's kind of unfair to essentially hold indie developers to a higher standard than AAA ones. Like, oh, the big studios can be unoriginal all they want, but the single person coding away in their free time while working a different job, you must come up with the next mind-boggling innovation. And indie developers have to eat too. Even if you want to do something creative, sometimes you have to do something that'll pay the bills. But to be honest, I'd find this trend pretty darn annoying if the games are coming from AAA developers too. It's just that when it shows up in indie games, generally a space where originality and creativity can thrive because they don't have shareholders to please, it makes it a bit more disappointing. Now that perhaps raises some broader questions about what we should expect from indie gaming in general, but I'm not here to discuss that, I'm here to complain. It just doesn't ultimately matter that much how or why this trend came to be. The issue is that it exists and that it's kind of annoying to see the same damn things pop up over and over on the internet. But with all that said, it doesn't mean that all mascot horror developers are just trying to make a quick buck. And even if they are, as long as some people are out there buying and enjoying their products, I mean, hustlers gotta hustle. And it doesn't mean that the games that they make in a vacuum are actually bad. But even if you do think that mascot horror games really are so awful, you still have options. Indie horror as a whole isn't dead. There are still loads of developers out there who've crafted interesting, fun, and unique experiences. I think it's easy to be cynical and grumpy about the state of mascot horror, but things are the way they are for a reason. People have motives for making these things, whether cynical or earnest, and people have motives for playing and consuming them. These games are filling a niche that gets some people excited. And even as the genre has become oversaturated, many games have still been able to add their own unique spins on it and contribute their own little creative touches. There are problems with indie horror, absolutely, but there's also plenty of opportunity for aspiring developers to spread their wings, flex their creativity, and provide more well-designed and enjoyable experiences for the masses.
Well done. You found me. Now prepare to discover... Oh, it's you two again.
So it was you! I always knew you were evil.
I'm not evil. I'm just trying to bring enlightenment to the world.
By murdering someone?
It's quite simple. You see, I wanted to do an ARG to grab people's attention so that as they solved it, it would lead them to me. Then, I would reveal to them the truth. I just figured that the murder would be, you know, a good way to make it more intriguing.
Is this the egg allergy thing again?
Yes, obviously.
The what?
Okay, so basically there's these two guys and they come up and they're all, egg allergies aren't real. And then Michael's like, I'm a vegan. And then, you know, we went on an egg hunt and we found a stick. And we threw the stick in a pond. That was pretty cool.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, and then we met Jimbo. Jimbo gave us a frisbee. We threw said frisbee.
that was pretty
and then I called him my egg guy. And then, you know, we won the egg hunt.
We had an egg guy.
That was pretty cool.
That was pretty
And then, yeah. So that's where we met Jimbo, by the way. Yeah. Hey, what happened to the other guy? He didn't like the idea, so he's off on a separate assignment.
Huh.
Okay, well I get the egg allergy thing, but still, you killed a man. A young, salt-of-the-earth American entrepreneur. You killed him.
Whatever. He'll be fine. And it got you to hear the truth, didn't it?
Yeah, he's kind of got a point. What? I mean, I always hear people be like, I have an egg allergy, and then go around dipping their fries in the Red Robin campfire sauce like it's nothing.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, but what about all the indie horror game stuff?
Like I said, it's about grabbing attention. Indie horror games are easily recognizable and marketable. And besides, the type of people that like the hidden lore in indie horror games are gonna like solving real-life mysteries too. So it just made sense to cater to that audience. You know what game you should have used? Karaoke Revolution. Why would I use that?
That's not a horror game.
Are you trying to tell me that being forced to sing Ocean Man in front of 15 people you don't know at a party isn't scary?
He's right.
Okay, fair point. But still, indie horror games have mass appeal. They were the best way for me to attract interest in the ARG.
Okay, well, that's true, but to be honest, going on a wild goose chase doing the same things over and over kind of made those indie horror games less interesting. They started to blend into each other and lose their novelty. In trying to grab my attention with a bunch of different indie horror games, you made those indie horror games less exciting and less worth my attention at all.
Well, I still got you here, and I converted at least one person, so it's kind of not my problem. Well, I guess the man who killed Jimbo is also the man who killed indie horror.
Yep. Well, overall, I'd say that was a pretty successful Halloween.
Yeah, more dead bodies than I saw last year. Breaking records.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we got no candy and had to spend our entire night solving a murder.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, solid.
Yeah.
He should have used Karaoke Revolution.
I know, right?